All right, good morning, brothers and sisters. It's a privilege for me to be here because I've heard a lot from Zoe about the church, and I'm also super grateful that you guys have been part of sending Zoe to the Unreached People group to Africa. And so in a way, I feel like this is more important than a lot of the churches that I've been to because we're going to be together for a long time because of Zoe's connection. So it's a privilege for me to be here. And as you saw the video already, that's not from Discovery footage. That's actually shot with our team, our crew, and then that was my voice. That was me talking about our mission. So if you don't know about Step 30, what we do is in Taiwan, people know us from collecting a lot of shoes and clothes and sent to 10 different countries in Africa. And then we also build schools, we build wells, we do farming, organic farming. We do a lot of community development. But of course, the media doesn't talk about our mission, which is training and sending missionaries. So that's also what we do here. And today, being an Easter Sunday, I feel like I should talk about salvational issue and then should talk about testimony. But before you even get to that, I just talk about my main message today. It's not about you. It's not about you. Okay. Let's take a look at the Gospel, Luke 1 to 11. This is the story of how Jesus called his first group of disciples. Okay, hope you can read it, but I'll read the story to you. One day as Jesus was standing by the lake, the people of the crowd were gathering and listening to him, to the word of God. He was at the water's edge, two boats left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, and the one belonged to Simon, and asked him to put a little from the shore. So he sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and let down the net for a catch." Okay, Simon answered, "Master, we've worked all night and haven't caught anything, but because you said so, I'll let down the net." When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish, and their net began to break. So they signaled to their partner in the other boat to come and help them. So they came and filled both boats so full that they all began to sink. So when Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man." For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of the fish they had taken, and so were James and John, the son of Zebedee, Simon's partners. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." This is the well-known verse, be fishers of men. So they pulled their boats up shore, left everything, and followed him. So we're all very familiar with this story. And I want to say this, though. In Christianity, a lot of times we're taught to come so that God can take away our pain and sin and wash away our problem and everything in the past. And he loved us. He's going to give us blessing. That's all true. That's all true. But if you really think about the story here, the disciples did not stuck on the blessing. That's not the end of the story. They didn't come to that conclusion, man, early retirement. We only have to come out to work 2 days a month, and then we got enough fish, right? That's not their conclusion. Their conclusion was, oh man, this is God himself right here. I'm a sinful man. And then what's the end? They dropped everything and followed him. So that is the end. Jesus didn't just call us to come enjoy his blessing and enjoy his grace. No, Jesus is calling the disciples to go and save the world, reach the world with him. So that is the calling of this disciple. And I think for a lot of Christians, we get stuck on the first part, which is the fish, the blessing, the comfort, the grace. Now, especially in this generation, I was talking to my wife, talking about how the generation is all about me, right? Since I was growing up, at least in my generation, everything is taught to show your individuality, right? To dress in a certain way, to get a tattoo or whatever, to express your opinion. I mean, in human history, we are at a very special time where everybody has a fan page to express how important their opinion is, right? It's really different once you're in Africa, in the tribe. Your identity is actually clicked with the group of people that you're with. You are the son of so-and-so. You are from this village. Even in the Bible time, we see that. But in modern days, we started like me, I am myself, So that is this generation. And I'm not saying this is good or bad, but we do have a tendency to fall into that self-centeredness even when we come to Christ. What does that mean? Self-centered Christianity. If we're not careful, when we come to Christianity with that same mindset, we can very easily read the Bible. Instead of thinking that is the story, the history, the mission of God, instead of looking at the context, we would generally jump into a very straight thinking, what does it say about me? How can it help me? You know what I'm saying? Everything's centered around me. And even when you come to prayer, the prayer can so be like, oh, God, please help me with my work. Help me with my family. Help me with the need that I want. Get your need met from Jesus. That will be the core value and behavior when you have that me mentality in Christianity. So instead of thinking, focusing on what God would do for me, we should focus on what God can do through me for other people. I think that is more of a biblical mindset. So if we look at Galatians chapter 2, verse number 20, we see this here. I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life that I now live in this body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. See, throughout the Bible, it's actually very clear. You are already dead. It's no longer you that lives, but you live a better life. It's not about you anymore. See, that's even what the baptism means, right? You die, you are buried with Christ, and then you come up. That means you're resurrected with Christ, living a new life. So let's look at Mark 10, 42 to 45. Jesus called them and said to his disciple, what did he say? You know that all those who are regarded as ruler of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Now this is us disciples. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be the first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. To give his life as a ransom for many. So, I don't know, this is actually very, very clear in the Bible. But is that our mentality? Even coming to church every Sunday, do we usually come and hoping the message is funny enough so we don't fall asleep? And I hope the message is relatable so that it can help my life. A lot of times that's generally what we think. I don't know how many Christians go to church every Sunday thinking, man, I wish there's an opportunity where I can serve my brothers and sisters. Man, I wish there's an opportunity where I can serve my community with my church. That is what I want every Sunday. I don't know if people think that way, but if we're so self-focused, we're very easily to think, what is it that I can get out of Sunday service? What is it that I can get out of my devotion, Bible reading, and prayer? So that is very, very different. A couple months ago, I was actually doing my devotion. I was reading Luke chapter 12. I think a lot of people are very familiar with Luke chapter 12. And here's what it says. It basically, I'm going to paraphrase this. It basically says this rich man, Jesus talking about parable, talking about this rich man. The ground of a certain rich man yield abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what should I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said this, okay, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build a bigger one. There I'll store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grains laid out for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, what did he say? You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever store up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. As I was reading the scripture, I actually didn't feel much. Why? Maybe because the illustration was so ancient in the sense that I don't own a barn. I don't know what this is feeling like. You know what I mean? So in my mind, I'm like having this modern day translation happening in my mind. And this is how I think. Or this is how I think when I read my Bible. I would imagine if Jesus was here today, what would he say? If he were to say the same thing today, how would he describe it? Okay, this is my translation. Okay, this is what Jesus would say. Jesus said, there's this rich businessman who has a lot of cash flow. And then he said to himself, what am I going to do with all this cash? Oh, I know, I should buy stocks. I should invest in mutual funds. I should buy some real estate. so I can create enough passive income, residual income, so I can retire early. So I can go travel around the world and relax and just be happy. But God said to him, you fool. You know, all these things that you store up for yourself, but tonight you're going to die. Who's going to enjoy all this stuff? And this is how it will be for whoever store up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. As I was interpreting that in my mind, you know what popped into my head? I was thinking, isn't that what 70, 80% of the Christians do? If you look in the church, look at all of us, how many of us have that kind of life goal where we can get a good education, especially being here in Taiwan, get a good education so we can get a good job? Why? So we can have more income, so we can invest in things, so we can retire early. Fire! I don't know if you know what it is. If you do, then you know what I mean. So that's exactly what Christians are striving towards to be. And that's exactly what God said. Fool. You fool. This actually reminds me of a sermon done by John Piper, Pastor John Piper. I don't know if you heard this, the seashell sermon, very famous. It's actually called Don't Waste Your Life, where he whipped out a piece of newspaper and said, most 80, 90% of the North Americans their life goal is to retire so they can go to the beach and pick up seashells. That's what their goal of life is, picking up seashells. And Christians, so the last 10 years of their life before they meet Jesus, that's what they plan to do. So they can take up their seashell collection to see Jesus. And now, of course, I'm not saying all these things are wrong. Okay, I'm not saying retirement. I'm not saying mutual fund or whatever stock. I'm not saying this is wrong. Actually, in the book of Proverbs, it talks about us need to be prudent, hard worker. It talks about we need to be wise. Even in the same book of Luke, it talks about we need to be mindful of the little things that we have so God can give us more. So we're not talking about don't invest, don't do anything wise. But we're talking about not to get your self-satisfaction from money. Not to get your sense of worth, not to mix up your mission, your end goal in life is this. So I think that's what it's talking about. Because ultimately it's not about us. It's not about us. So like that video I was saying, I actually haven't watched that video for years. And it's kind of like relate to that. You know, we can't imagine how we can sit in a very comfortable place, enjoy the grace of God, enjoy the abundance of blessing, which is retirement, whatever, while the world suffers. And I was thinking to myself too, you know, why? Why is it that some Christians will be out there working really hard, be in the mission field, and some just kick back and relax? And I thought to myself, is it because they don't understand the gospel? The gospel should drive you to devote your life into the mission. So what does it mean? Okay, we all know the scripture, John 3:16. Okay, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. This verse is, everybody can recite this, whether you're in North American, Taiwanese churches, everybody knows this verse. But sometimes it's just, we grow numb to it. We grow numb to it. Maybe we don't even understand the true meaning behind it. Okay, until I have my kids. Okay, so I want to share with you this journey of how my daughter has taught me a lot of different things. Because, you know, before you had kids, you kind of can only imagine this relationship of you and God from the kid's perspective. But then after you have kids, you understand, you know, the father's perspective. For example, I finally understand it's possible to love somebody so much, but also want to strangle them at the same time. Anyway, my kids taught me a lot. So let's take on this journey. Okay, I got married 2 months later. You know, I met my wife. 2 months later, we got engaged very fast. And then 2 months later, we're married. And then we thought about like, okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves. You know, let's just enjoy our married life for a year or two before we have kids. And then in a couple months, I go home. I saw this on the table. Immediately, I realized two things, two very important things. One, I'm going to be a dad. Number two, North Americans' English is not so much better than Taiwanese. Anyway, so yeah, I'm about to be a dad, so I'm very excited. Let's go to the next page. So 9 months, very fast. This is like a couple weeks before we gave birth. This is our first daughter. And then one night, water broke, rushed to the hospital. Let's go to the next picture. You see, I'm a guy who likes to joke around. So, even in the hospital bed, I was still joking around, pushing my wife over. I want to lay next to her. But anyway, we were just having fun in this whole process. It was very, very difficult. And my daughter did come a couple weeks early. So let's go to the next picture. 5.9 pound, 2.7 kilos. So if you know your kid's weight, that's a little bit on the lighter side. Okay? So this is my daughter. Her name is Enya, the Chinese. Enya is the English name. But in Chinese, Enya, if you know your Chinese, it means the grace of Asia. Okay, the grace of Asia. So we gave birth to our first kid. It was pretty amazing being able to hold your first daughter and then knowing that she's a little bit underweight. As a Chinese parent, you kind of want to like show your love by feeding and feeding and feeding. That's how Chinese parents show their love, which I did. Let's go to the next picture. I did a pretty good job doing that. Anyway, so my daughter was, I had a lot of fun with my daughter. Like I said, I learned a lot about, being a dad. And I also started to learn about what the Heavenly Father would feel like. And of course, being the jokester I am, I have a lot of fun with my kid. Let's go to the next picture. For example, you can pull a prank on her. She cannot do anything back. We had a lot of fun. So, but let's go to the next picture. She's grown now, okay? She's normal. She looks normal now, okay? So this is her. She's 10. I think she's 10 now, okay? Let's go to the next picture. She actually travels with me to Africa to live there for a bit, and then we came back, and then every other week I'll be preaching everywhere. So she will follow me. She will listen to all the stories of what we've done in Africa, a lot of the persecution that the Christian will have to suffer around the world, and she has met a lot of missionaries too. Okay, so I remember this time. This is when she was in second grade. She wanted to share about her life, her life in Africa to all her classmates in Taiwan. So I thought that was a pretty proud moment for me. And every night we would have the opportunity to talk about unreached people group, talk about persecution, talk about, the Great Commission. And then I remember my kids, they would say to me, Dad, I want to take the gospel to the places where they still don't know Jesus. And, I remember quoting, was it David Platt? I said, it's not going to be easy because all the easy places have been taken. Where is the places left? Persecuted country, underdeveloped areas. Those are the places that Jesus, the message, has not gotten yet. And I said, are you sure this is where you want to go? So these will be the kind of conversation that we will always have before they go to sleep. I'll pray with them. And let's go to the next picture. So this is me and my daughter. We're so tight. I love her to death. And it has taught me a lot about the gospel. Specifically what? I want to show you this something. Let's imagine a scenario. Let's do an illustration. Can I have brother stand here with me? Chris? Okay, Chris. Okay, let's picture this. This is our village. Okay, let's just say this is our village here. And Chris, I'm the police, the chief of police, okay, in this town. Okay, I'm the sheriff. So I fight crime. I busted those gang members, their activity, so they hate me. And Chris is a bad, bad boy.
I didn't do it.
He didn't like going to school. He was always getting in trouble. So eventually he just said, you know what? I'm just going to give up. I don't want to do this anymore. He dropped out of school and started to hang on the street. And then all of a sudden he feels like he needs more friends, more power, so he joined the gang. I don't know if you guys have joined a gang before, but I have a lot of friends that joined the gang. It's not easy. You have to get beat up before you can enter in. That's kind of like their orientation. So Chris got beat up, finally, got the street rep, and then entering into the gang. Started selling drugs, started doing all these things, right? And then one time, there was a big fight. Fight broke out. Everybody was fighting. Some of his friends, some of his homies got really hurt, injured. And some of his friends got put in jail. So he started thinking, what am I doing with my life? If I live long enough, continue to live this way, I'm going to end up either in jail or be dead on the street. He wanted to get out. And guess what? It's not easy to get in. It's harder to get out. I have my friend that couldn't get out of the gang members. But anyway, Chris talked to his boss. No, he wasn't allowed to come out. So he came to the chief of police. He's saying, hey, YuJen, chief, I really want to have a new life. I really want to get out of the gang. So what can I do? And I look at Chris and it's like, hey, you know what? This young man got a bright future ahead of him. So I decided to go down to the factory, the warehouse that they hang. So imagine me taking Chris, going there, and then talk to the big boss. Hey, boss man, you know, this young guy, he made a few mistakes. He joined a gang by accident. He's still got a bright future ahead of him. So how about just let him go? Just let him go. He just want to get a regular job, be a regular dude. And then, guess what? The boss hated my guts because I'm the one who's busting their crime activities and stuff, right? So let's just imagine he took a few seconds to think and then say, you want Chris to go? Sure. Why don't you train him with your daughter? Imagine me actually drive home, pick up my daughter, Anya, and then took her to the warehouse and then let her go in to the warehouse with all these gangsters. And then my daughter asking me, Dad, why are we doing this? And then at that time, I took Chris out and imagine the door shut behind me and I can start hearing my daughter cry, why have you left me here? And I started hearing people slapping her. I started hearing her crying, weeping, and I started hearing people whipping her, torturing her, so that Chris can get his freedom. And that is exactly what Jesus did for us. You know, I remember thinking that, I was like, what kind of father, like how much pain would you have to suffer watching your kid suffer and being tortured? And how much love does he have for me so that he would actually go through that? So that in real life, I was like Chris. So I can have a new life, that freedom. And let's just picture this for one moment. Imagine Chris actually got out and then get a job and then work 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, a month later, he gets his first paycheck, 30,000 NT. And he thought to himself, oh man, I worked so hard. This is so little money. And he started thinking to himself, maybe I should go back to sell drugs. That's a lot faster. What do you think I'm going to think? Dude, do you understand how much I have sacrificed for you to get out of that lifestyle and you just want to hop back in like that? And I think a lot of times when we don't understand salvation, when we don't understand how much God has sacrificed his son for us, that's our view when it comes to sin. It's fine just watching something on the internet. You know, a lot of my friends do that. Oh, this document signed in this way, it's not really technically legal, but it's okay. Everybody does that. It's just a little this, a little that. It's all right. Why? Because we don't understand how much God sacrificed so that we can be sin-free. And it's only reasonable for Chris to think, man, how can I repay you? What kind of service do you need? And imagine him seeing the chief still working so hard to save the other kids. He would naturally want to come and help me. And that is the mentality of a Christian who understands how much their debt have been paid and how much God has sacrificed for them. So it's only reasonable, it's only natural for them to think, what can I do for God? And I'm going to go on this mission to save more people that are in the predicament the way that I was in. So that is understanding the grace of God. That is understanding the salvation of God. Thank you, Chris. Don't go back into the gangs. All right. So, you see, let's look at the next scripture. This is exactly what the Bible is talking about. How when he died for the ungodly. He died for the ungodly, even when we still hated him. And I remember reading the scripture. Yeah, when I was in Australia, I was on the street doing graffiti, being chased by the police. At that time, I didn't do anything for God. I didn't want him. I spat in his face. But he died for my sin. He died for my sin. And it's because of that I do what I do now. A lot of times people will say, why would you take your wife and your kids to Africa to go on a mission, to do that? You don't have any saving. You're going through this kind of lifestyle. What were you thinking? It's that's because you don't understand the kind of lifestyle I had. That's because you don't understand how much Jesus paid for my sin. Everything I have now is his. And that is the grace of God. So, I think especially today will be the day. Let us remember that. Being Easter and all, he sacrificed his son for us. He sacrificed his son for us so that we can have this new life. Which reminds me of a pastor that I really like, William Booth. Have you heard of William Booth? The founder of Salvation Army. You guys heard of Salvation Army. Everybody knows them. William Booth, Pastor William Booth, he had a really big heart of saving people's soul. And so he started a lot of churches, and then also he take care of a lot of orphans and widows and a lot of humanitarian projects. That's what they're very, very well known of. So I remember William Booth's story. You can go read it. It's very, very amazing how at an early young age he would take care of people who the church would not want to be in the church. So he would take them in. So this one day, he was in his living room, and all of a sudden there was this vision pop into his head. He said he was almost seeing it like it's movie playing out. So what happened was he saw a black ocean, raging wave, a ton of people in there suffering in anguish, screaming out for help, but there was no help. Like that picture, but all of a sudden, there was a platform popping out from that raging sea. And then on top of the inside that platform, there was a mountain. Okay, so all of a sudden he started seeing a hand lifted those people out of the raging ocean, and then he put them on the stage. And those people are very, very grateful at first. They're so happy at first. Oh man, we're not dying anymore. Yay, we're not in this turmoil, this problem, this persecution, tribulation anymore. We are saved. However, after a while, he started to notice something very interesting. Those people who have been saved started doing painting. They started enjoying life, listening to music, going to concert, going to watch movies. They started getting a good job, enjoying things in life. Forgetting they once were in that raging ocean. And then there was another group of people that are so afraid of falling into the ocean, they kept themselves from very far away from the ocean so they don't step back in there, so they don't fall back in there. What's even more interesting is there was a group of Christian, they call Christian, keep going towards the mountain and screaming at the top of their lung at that cross and thinking and saying this: Jesus, save us, come to us, love us. Jesus, we want more of you. While Jesus was still in the ocean, calling them out, come, who is willing to come down here to save those people with me? They don't hear it because they're so caught up in their activities in the safe platform while people are still dying in the raging sea. So all of a sudden, this vision kind of finished, and Pastor William Booth understood one thing. He was one of the person dying in that ocean. God saved him. And there were a lot of Christians have already forgotten about it. But Jesus, today, he is still calling Christians to go into that raging sea because there's still millions of unbelievers that are crying out for help. So that was his vision. So brothers and sisters, we have to understand we are on that mission. We're on a mission. Jesus is not looking for somebody to come and gather and listening to his message. Jesus was calling a group of disciples that would go with him according to what we have read earlier. You know, in the Bible, it mentioned believers 5 times only. Christian, that word was only mentioned 3 times. But disciple, the word disciple was mentioned 269 times. What does that mean? That means that follow me factor is the core value and identity that we should have, is to follow him and do exactly what he's doing to help the people who are in need, to preach the gospel to the end of the world. So in the book of James 2, it says this, right? What good is it, my brother, if someone says he has faith, but does not have work? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed or lacking in daily food, and one of you said to them, hey, go in peace, be warm and be filled, without giving them the things they need for the body, what good is that? So also faith by itself, if it does not have work, is dead. We ought to be out there actually doing it. And I think what's interesting is a lot of times for missionaries, for us to preach these kind of messages, we actually didn't say anything new. We don't actually say anything new. Like, you probably here you have already know all this stuff, right? I assume nobody's surprised. Nobody's surprised like, oh, I didn't know I got to evangelize. I didn't know I got to preach the gospel. Did you know that? I mean, we all do. We all know that. But are we doing it? I guess that's the point, right? We all know we got to take care of the orphans and widows. We all know we got to do all these things. But what is it really like in the world right now? So to end this, I want to show you guys this chart. So we all know that we're in a global village. Just the fact that you guys speak English, coming from different countries, being in Taiwan, it shows that. But what is the world really like? Let's go to the next page. Here's what it's like. 1% of the population owns 40% of the wealth, while 10% owns 85%. So very interesting. That means 90% of the population actually only owns 15% of the wealth. Okay? So, but however, I would bet we are at that 10% though. We are at that 10% in the sense that we are at that very rich. Why? Because if you go to the next page, you understand 46.9% of the population of the whole world, they live under $7 a day. So that's not minority. That's a lot of people. That's almost half the world is living under that kind of money. I don't know if you have friends that are like that because we live in Africa. We do a lot of works in the tribal area, in the village area. A lot of my friends there are like that. You know, I remember last year leading a team come visit us. And then they would ask, people from our village. We prepare them eggs and things, sausage to eat. And then when they were talking to local people, have you eaten sausage before? I remember the auntie said, yeah. 7 years ago, I remember this one time I went in town and I had a sausage. They're not the minority though. I know it sounds crazy, but they are not. There's a lot of people that are living like that. And I do know a lot of them. They would go out, work 8 hours, 10 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week. And then at the end of the day, they will bring like $1 or $2 home. What does that mean? That means they have enough money to starve, but not dead. That means all their kids would not be able to go to school. What does that also mean? That means they will have to pray very hard so no kids will get sick. You guys better not get sick because we cannot afford it. And that's their lifestyle. Let's go to the next page. So what does that also mean? That means they lack access to basic sanitary. Like no clean water, basically. In our village, a lot of family will share one toilet. I mean, it's not technically a toilet, it's pretty much a hole. So a lot of families will share that. So what does that mean? That means if one of you gets sick, start having diarrhea, all of you, the whole compound will get sick. And you might think diarrhea doesn't mean much, but I don't know if you guys know this, the reason why Bill Gates started Melinda and Gates Foundation, Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation, is because he read there are millions of kids die each year from diarrhea. That's why he started it. And that's what's happening in our village or in a lot of areas in the world. They don't have clean water. And on top of that, they're already living in the condition that I was telling you, lack of resource. And so that's how the world is right now. So let's go to the next page. So this 11% of the world don't have enough food. COVID actually bumped it up to 30%. So I imagine it's increased a little bit right now. So, but that's still a lot of people don't have enough food. Okay, so next page. So let's go back to religion a little bit. 1/3 of the population claim to be Christian. Okay, 15% non-religious, 24.9% on the rise, Islamic religion. Now, according to the traveling team and Joshua Project and a lot of the Christian sources that I looked into, if you really, because these 30% Christian in the world, they include the people that's a so-called Christian community, Christian nation, meaning they just count everybody. It doesn't mean personal devotion to follow Jesus. So that's 30%, that's how it comes. So they would say it's actually about 10% of the world, which is still a lot, But, let's go to the next page. Did you know that there's 28% of the world that we call unreached people group, which is people who have virtually no exposure to hear the gospel. So that's billions, 2 billion people. So what does that mean, like unreached people group? You know a lot of people here in Taiwan, they don't know Jesus, but they are not unreached people. Why? They are people who don't believe in Jesus, but they are not unreached people. So what is the difference? People who don't believe Jesus have access to it, meaning they can drive down the road, there's a library where they can read a Bible, they can buy a Bible. Meaning they can pop the TV channel open, there's good TV, so they can hear the gospel. Meaning they can walk down the street and come to the Pearl Church, there's access to the gospel and there's no persecution for them to get that. There's access, they just don't believe. Where there are 2 billion people, they are what we call the unreached. What does that mean? They have no access. Because the Bible has not translated to the language that they're speaking. So they don't have Bible in their language. Because there's no local church in the region, so they cannot walk to a church to hear a message. And because they're under religious restriction, so they don't have any TV or media that they can hear about Jesus. And guess what? There's no missionary going there. So from the time they were born, grow up, get old, retire, die, they will not hear the gospel. They will not hear the good news. So it's not that they don't want Jesus. They have no choice but to enter into eternity without him. Even if they are seeking, even if they're seeking the truth, even if they know there's got to be a higher power, there's got to be somebody who created everything, they still have no chance. Why? Because there's no access to the gospel. That's what we call the unreached people, 2 billion of them. What does that mean? That means every Sunday we're in church singing, hallelujah, we want all tongues to come worship you. We want all knees to bow to you. Guess what? It's not going to happen. Why? Because there are 2 billion of them. They would never get the opportunity to worship him if we don't take the gospel to the ends of the world, which is clearly commanded us to do. So that is what we're trying to do here. And let's go to the next page. The billions and billions of people that have no access to the gospel. Guess what? They're missionaries, yes, but 97% of the missionaries are not going to the unreached people. Where are they going? They're going to places that already have churches. Not that is a bad thing. I do want to stress that. Not that is a bad thing. Missionaries coming to Taiwan to serve is not a bad thing. But there's already Taiwanese churches, if you understand what I mean. Where there are persecuted countries, where there are undeveloped tribes, those are the places that I'm talking about. And those are the places only 3% of the missionaries will actually go there. And that is what we call in missiology the gray imbalance. Even finance too. Let's go to the next page. 99.999, I don't know how many nines, but practically all the money that's given in Christian churches, only 0.00.1% will actually goes towards reaching the unreached. So the Great Commission, we are still few steps. We still got a few steps to go. And brothers and sisters, as a Pearl Church member, you should be very proud. Why? Because you are involved in reaching the unreached by sending Zoe to that unreached, underdeveloped area. By supporting her, by giving towards the church, you are already part of reaching the unreached, the Great Commission. And I think it is super, super important for you to build that relationship with Zoe, because hopefully by the end of the year, she will be able to successfully be sent out. That means for the next couple years, you will not be able to see her. That means for the next couple of years, she will work very, very hard to learn Swahili and then learn the second language, the tribal language, and then move herself into the desert. So I greatly admire the missionaries that we send out. I truly admire them. I admire Zoe, what she's devoted herself into doing, because that is what is commanded us to do 2,000 years ago and today. And lastly, I do want to say this. Jesus already said it. The harvest is already ready, but the workers are few. So we should pray. More and more Christians will actually willing to go out there. Will actually willing to go. So I think I want to share with this one last story before I close. A lot of people know that. I travel around the world. I do a lot of ministries in Africa. But 10 years ago, let me tell you how it all started. Okay. Yes, I started by sending a lot of shoes to treat the jiggers. But that was, at that time, I didn't have an organization. I was just doing it as my personal thing. My family and I, we saw the need. We sent shoes there. We gave them the shoes. I remember first time going there, going into the village, a slum, giving out shoes. And I remember in the slum, as I stepped into the slum, I saw an older man laying down, face down, on the ground. Like it looks like he's dead. But he's not. So I asked the pastor, what's happening here? And the pastor said, he's drunk. Because there is this illegal brew alcohol called chenga. And what it is a lot of people, they have no means of making any money, so they make this illegal alcohol to sell it to the people here in this slum. So they can make a tiny bit of money so they can actually survive, won't starve. And then there's a lot of people that have no hope. So they would drink alcohol, that kind of illegal alcohol, that would actually kill them. I'm not talking about the traditional, the Western alcoholism killing them. I'm talking about those alcohols that are actually really, really bad for your body, because they're, I don't know how they were brewed chemically, but they would just actually die on the street. And they want that because they had no hope. So I was like, man, that's tough. So I started walking into the village, the slum, and I walk into this family house. It's pretty much a mud house. It's about the size of these 3 rolls, so kind of that big. And then there was a grandma there, a grandma living with 5 of her grandkids. So her kids, like her son and daughter or daughter-in-law is gone. I don't know where they were, but the grandma was left taking care of all 5 grandkids. putting them through school and everything. So I was just talking. It's really tough. Like that place is mud house, very dark, that small. Everybody's just, it's mud ground too. So they will lay a few, what do you call it, T-shirts and stuff, and they would just lay on the ground and sleep like that. They would live like that. And then as I was about to done with my conversation, and I turned around, getting ready to go, and I saw this big pot thing at the corner, like this big. And I was like, what is that? So I asked the pastor, what is that thing there? And then the pastor told me, oh, that's what they use to brew chenga. I was like, oh man, so she's the one who's selling the illegal alcohol. And at the time, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to respond. Because that was my first year in Africa. This is 10 years ago. I was younger. I didn't have any ministry. I didn't have any experience. I know what to do now. I have a lot of resources. I can help her. But at the time, I didn't know what to do because I'm not going to be like so self-righteous thinking, oh, no, you should not sell this stuff. This is bad for the community. And you and your grandkids should just starve. I didn't know. I didn't want to say that. But at the same time, I was stuck because I didn't want her to continue to sell that. And then, other people die. So I didn't know what to do. I didn't do much. I just prayed for her. So I left and I went back to the guest house. To the guest house. So that night, I remember sitting at my dinner table by myself, looking at my dinner. And I was thinking, man, I got this food to eat. And I got this light above my head. And that grandma is still in that mud house, starving with her grandkids. And I said to myself, I bet in 2 weeks, I will completely forget about them because I'm going to be back in Taiwan by then. I'm going to sleep on my actual mattress. I'm going to enjoy my hot shower. I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to go back to serving my local church. I would definitely forget about those grandma. So I made a promise to myself then. I would not forget about them. The minute I get back to Taiwan, we will start an organization. We will continue to come back here to do what we do, to do what needs to be done. So I did. I started Step 30 International Ministries, and then it grew and grew and grew. 10 years later, now we are very, very big. We've been in 10 different countries now. We have worked with so many hundreds of churches. We have sent missionaries. We've built so many schools and built many things. And it's all because of that promise too. And I gotta tell you, good news though. I think it's 3-4 years later, that grandma actually got into our house church network. So she no longer sells those illegal alcohol. She's part of our church member now in one of the house church. This is what I want to tell you. You will meet your grandma in life, in your everyday life, in your daily devotion, in your worship, in your church, singing, listening to sermons. You will feel a calling. You will feel the need to do something about certain things. Whether it's to take care of the community around you, whether it's to donate to the whatever cause, whether it's to care for the needs of the people surrounding you, whether it's to serve in the local church, whether something, you will feel called. And let me tell you, if you don't answer that call, in a week or so, you will be flooded with your everyday living, with your regular job, with the things that you do, and you will never remember that grandma. So brothers and sisters, when you do have that kind of calling, when you do have that kind of pulling from God, answer it, because it's going to lead you into an amazing journey with God. And that is what Easter is all about. What is it about? It's about you receiving the grace from God. It's about you receiving that new life so that you can now walk with Him to accomplish the Great Commission, the mission that He has called you to do, so that others can enjoy that great news the same way that you did receive it. So let's bow our head and pray.